This is a conversation with Randy Smith for the Kentucky Marriage Equality and Religious Liberty Oral History Project. We're in the studio room of Breckenridge Hall on Morehead State's campus located in Rowan County, Kentucky. Today's June 7th, 2016, and it's 3:30 p.m. My name is Sherry Kelly. So let's go over a little bit of biographical information, if you wouldn't mind, Randy.
Sure.
Where were you born, and where did you grow up, if you wouldn't care to tell me a little bit about that?
I was born officially in Williamson, West Virginia. My folks were living across the river in Pike County. And so I was in Pike County for most of my childhood. And 12 years old, we moved to Bath County.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on some of your childhood experiences?
I had a really good childhood. I was, I guess, a typical boy. I kind of got into some meanness, and I remember a fond memory. I actually blew up a Mustang once with a firecracker. So, but yeah, that was pretty interesting. And my older brother and I were out shooting BB guns, and thought came to me to shoot him with it. So I asked him to. I dropped my BBs and asked him if he'd bend over and pick up the BBs, and when he did, I shot him. So, but I guess it's just I guess that's typical. I really don't know, but
sounds typical. I can see my son doing something like that.
Yes. Okay. Good. So I'm normal. That's highly questionable. So definitely.
Do you want to tell me about your current occupation?
My true occupation is that I'm an ordained minister, and that's what brings me the most joy that I have in my life. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy seeing lives changed. But the most joy that I get is out of serving Jesus Christ, and that's the air that I breathe. That's what makes me tick. That's why I get up. That's why I go to bed. And one day, that's why I'm going to die, is so that a way I get to go be with Him. So that's my passion. Okay.
What about your religious upbringing or ideological background? Do you want to elaborate on
Sure.
that?
My mom once told me, after I announced my calling to preach, that it didn't really, I guess, surprise her, because when I was a child, even a small child, I loved to go to Sunday school back in Pike County. And one of the ministers told my mom that he really thought that God had something special for me because of the way that I loved church, And I remember going home, and it's really neat that this is coming out, because I've reflected on this quite a bit here lately. But I remember, as just a small child, we lived in a place called Turkey Creek, Kentucky. And oh, do you really? Okay,
yes.
Okay. Of course, when you're a child, everything seems to be bigger, and mountains seem to be taller. But we lived up on this side of this mountain, and it seemed like it took forever to get up to the top of it, but I'm sure it didn't. But I remember after church, I'd come home and I'd get my dad's handsaw, and I would cut into the ground, thinking, now here I was, probably 4 or 5 years old, thinking that I was doing Satan harm and God good. And so, looking back on things like that now, like I said, I have had a life of mischief as well. so
a few trips to the altar.
Yes, yeah. I know what second chances are all about. So definitely.
Oh, that's funny. Do you want to tell me about your current church membership or organizational involvement?
Sure. At one point, for a long time, my wife and my family and myself were members of Charity Free Will Baptist out on 519. We spent quite a bit of time there. My kids actually grew up there. Here recently, we have felt led to move our membership to Bowen Chapel Free Will Baptist Church, which is in Carter County, and it's not far from the Rowan County line. And I have served as pastor. And right now I'm serving in the role of evangelist. I preach quite a bit, different places. God has really blessed me to have a life full of ministry. I have stood in front of the White House with close to 1 million people, 1 million men. It wasn't the Louis Farrakhan Million Man March at all, but it was a Christian event, and we stood there. And one of the things that really, it was during the Bill Clinton days, I think his second term, but really I can remember tugging my heart was how that the sun one morning was coming up, and it was coming up right behind the White House as I stood there. And I was just in awe at the majesty of it all and the beauty of it all. And I can remember my heart just so burdened for President Clinton because the policies and the corruption that was linked to his presidency. And one of the things I can remember of all things is during that time when I was watching the sun come up over the White House is I started praying for the aborted babies and for abortion, that it would come to an end in America. And I actually had dreams of sitting and talking with President Clinton and him rejecting things that I were talking to him about. And I've had a lifetime full of ministry, and earlier this year I just got back, and I think it was in March, from my first missions trip to Haiti, and I love Haiti. It is if the Lord would make arrangements for me to go to Haiti, then I would go and be there. The people over there are wonderful. And, I've told people that. They're like, why would you want to go to such a third world country and they have so much that America does not have. And while America, we've got everything we want at our fingertips, they have very little. And many of them do not know where their next meal is going to come. But if a person was seeking material things, then Haiti would not be the place to go. But if a person is seeking spiritual endeavors and laying up treasures in heaven, it's the place to go. It's the place to go. Unfortunately, America does not have that. People in America is not hungry for God. Haitians are very hungry for God. I was over there, I think, a week, preached in a revival in a compound building that was every bit almost 100 yards long, and that's no exaggeration. And we had multiple nights. We have 1,200 plus people coming, and we had multiple nights, 300-400 people come to the altar, praying, and it was reported that people were coming out of the mountains.
I was going to ask you about that. Did they walk for miles?
They did. I
have a little bit of familiarity with that myself.
Yeah, they walked for miles, and the good thing over there is they don't really care about denominations. They don't care if you're a Church of God, Church of Christ, or Baptist, or Free Will Baptist, or Independent Baptist, or Pentecostal, or any of that. They would support the revival from many different churches. And it was really, really awesome. I actually got to witness firsthand the Haitian Christian leaders that were witnessing. What they'll do is whenever Americans come, they want to go down on the streets to witness. So they wanted to go, and I think we went almost every day except for a couple days. And I actually got to witness one of the leaders to lead a woman that was voodoo worshiper.
Was this in Port-au-Prince by any chance?
And it wasn't in Port-au-Prince. It was in Mibile, I believe. Yeah. And or no, I'm sorry, it was in Osoto. That's where it was. But anyway, they led her to the Lord, and she pledged her allegiance to Christ and took off her voodoo necklace and gave it to the person that had witnessed to her to throw it away. So, and I also got to witness voodoo worshipers doing their ritual in a waterfall over there, and it was totally totally strange. So
I've heard about it.
yeah,
I haven't been there.
yeah, it is. If you ever get a chance to go to Haiti, it's well worth it. It is well worth it. I would love to go. And you know, the thing about it is, I know it's God that does it, because I'm not a wealthy person and I don't have those resources, the funds. But I now have my passport, and my wife actually has her passport, and went to Mexico, and she swore she would never fly, and she did for the first time. And that was probably, I think, in March or April, I think, something like that. But or maybe in May. But anyway, she flew to Mexico and or San Diego, and then went across. But it was really good.
Wow.
Yeah. So both of us have our passports, and we really haven't spent very much money at all on them. So God has orchestrated. I keep it in the back of my mind. You know, we've got our passports for a reason. I wonder what that reason is. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. See what happens.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've heard others talk about Haiti and seen films from some of my experiences. How did you become involved with your current church?
Actually, Bowen Chapel was the church that I cut my teeth on as a young minister. Okay. And I would go there, and Del Richmond's the pastor. And he would just simply, if you're a minister and you show up, you're most likely going to preach. And so I cut my teeth there. And they have, for a long time, they've been very supportive of me. They were very supportive during the Kim Davis issue, very supportive, and as was Dixie Park Free Will Baptist Church in Grayson. So that's how that I've come to get acquainted with them. It's just over the years, and I felt the Lord leading us out of charity. I didn't know where, so I just felt one day He just told me I need to go help Del Richmond. You know, he's in his 70s, and one day, if I live long enough and the Lord tarries, I hope that if I'm pastoring church, I'm blessed to have a young minister come along and kind of help me.
Right.
You know? So, yeah.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
And talk about some of the stuff that happened last year. How did you become involved with the religious liberty movement?
That's something that I was asked several times during the whole event, and I still shake my head at, because when the ruling came down from the Supreme Court, I was not surprised. Actually, my pastor at the time, he called me and said, "Can you believe what the Supreme Court just ruled?" And I said, "Did they rule for gay marriage?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, it doesn't surprise me," and it didn't. And I think it surprised him more than it did me. I'm sure of it, but. Well, I think it was that Monday after the ruling, my wife and I, of course I was selling insurance at the time, so I had more flexibility, but my wife at the time, she got up, we used to go walking at the park every morning. That's what I thought we were doing. But I noticed, man, she's getting extra pretty for some reason, And so anyway, I said, "Are we going walking?" She said, "No." She said, "I'm going to stand with Kim Davis, for Kim Davis." I said, "Oh." And honestly, I really didn't want the disruption in my life.
Right.
And I was like, because I knew that if she did, then there was something there, that I was. So anyway, I had to go to work. I was helping, actually at the time, I took time off from insurance and was helping my pastor build a addition to a church. And so anyway, I went on to work, but my whole heart, my whole mind was with my wife, standing for Kim Davis and religious liberty. And at first it started out Kim Davis, but as it progressed, I realized that there was something bigger than Kim Davis, and this whole thing wasn't so much about Kim Davis. It was about religious liberty. And so because my wife went and stood, I got involved. And when I got involved, which it didn't take me very long at all because I knew what was happening and what I needed to do, but when I decided to take the stand and get involved as well, that's when God pushed me in the forefront of everything. And I tell people this, and it's one of those things that you hesitate to tell because it sounds too unbelievable. But during that course of time, in however many months, 2 or 3 months that it lasted, I know that I talked to more than 100 media outlets. And from Dublin, Ireland, to I think France.
Oh my.
Yeah. I did actually a live radio program in Dublin, and I was on my way to preaching a revival, and my pastor was driving me. I told him what was up, and he said, well, I'll drive you so that way you can do the interview. So we actually pulled over at the rest stop between here and, right up the road on 64 heading east. And so I did my interview there, and it lasted probably 20 minutes. And of course, it was a liberal media outlet and so forth. And one of the things that I really remember him asking me is he was trying to make the point that, you can't really go by what the Bible says because the Bible's old and it's old manuscripts and I said, so are you saying it's out of date? And he said, yeah. He said, exactly, it's out of date. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, it's just that's a good word. He said, it's out of date. I said, I said, tell me, if it's out of date, what date did it expire? What date did it go out of, And so that totally threw him for a loop, and he started stuttering and stumbling. And again, this was a live radio program, and I made him look bad. And so he went to a break. And after that, the lady came on and said, Mr. Smith, can you hold on? And I was getting to the point where I was going to have to leave because I was going to be running late. And I told her, I said, I would love to. I said, but I really need to get on to the revival, And so, those are things that, under my own wit and my own intelligence, I could have never thought of. But it's just one example that God put the words in my mouth,
Right.
And He said He'd do that. He said if you open your mouth, He'll fill it.
Right.
So.
What? You've kind of told me a little bit about your reaction to the Rowan County Clerk's decision when you said your wife went,
right.
and then shortly thereafter. How shortly thereafter? Was it a week or was it just a couple of days?
No, actually, my wife went down on the Monday after the ruling, and then it was just probably a couple of days after that I was down there. So I knew where I had to be, and this was such an important issue that my son was going to Myrtle Beach on his honeymoon. Him and his wife had just gotten married, and he cut his honeymoon short to come back and be part of that and to stand against the violation of religious liberty. So it was a very, very important time.
This is sort of the same question, but
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about your reaction, which you've already told me a little bit about your reaction, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more
Sure.
about your reaction to the Rowan County Clerk's decision not to issue marriage license to either gay or straight couples.
I was very supportive of her to do that, and I thought it was very wise because she wasn't discriminating, and that took the, if you want to call it, the ammunition away from that side. It took the ammunition away from that side because, they no longer could say, well, you're just discriminating against gays, and I thought that was very clever, and the thing about it is, Sherry, I actually did research on the Constitution in the state of Kentucky, and nowhere does it say that a county clerk has to issue marriage license.
Okay.
It doesn't say that. It says they shall. So it doesn't say that they have to. So when she refused to do it, she was within her legal rights to do so, according to the Constitution.
Right.
So.
Can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with the movement? I know you were very involved.
Yes. Yeah.
Sort of the leader, of her supporters, but go ahead and elaborate.
Okay. It really, as it continued, it was really a snowball effect. The more that it rolled, the bigger it got. And of course, where I evangelize and churches in the area, they know me. They seen that I was taking a stand. My family was taking a stand, and so just little by little, they started coming out, and I would publish it on Facebook that, hey, we're going to be down there at this time and this time, and this is what's happening. And I stayed in constant contact with sources that would give me heads up on things and on legal matters, and even include me in on some things that were coming down that hadn't materialized just yet. So there was people that I could get advice from that I would call and talk to, and my biggest the concern about the whole issue. I know there was some who wanted me to fight against gay marriage, period, and for the record, I'm not for gay marriage. I think it goes against the moral compass of society, and I think it goes against the biblical standard. But I also know that, and this is a very gross analogy, and I apologize, but if you're going to eat an elephant, you got to do so one bite at a time, and you can't eat the whole thing with one bite. And so what I saw was more of a threat to religious liberty than I did anything else at the time. And so that's why that I said that it became more than just a Kim Davis issue. Right. At first, what I saw was, here's this Christian, this lady, precious lady, who was taking a stand against gay marriage. And I definitely was in support of that. But as it materialized, what I really saw was that religious liberty, the very thing that our forefathers fought for and died for and broke away from another nation for, the very thing that America came to existence for and because of, was happening today. And we still see it in 2016. Religious liberty violations. And, don't mean to sound overly dramatic, but the only way that this world or this government, this politically correct society will ever shut me up is to kill me. That's the only way. Because no matter what they say, no matter what they do, I will always preach the truth. And I'll try to do it in love. I don't hate gay people. They need to realize that what they're doing is going against what the Bible calls for. The Bible says it's an abomination for man to lie with mankind as with womankind. It's simple, it's plain. And so one can draw a conclusion that, if a person is gay, then they are rejecting what the Word of God says. But so is the adulterer. So is the murderer. And the one thing that all of these, the one thing that everybody has in common, I don't care if you're black, white, gay, straight, I don't care who you are, the one thing that everybody has in common is that they need a Savior. And while things were at times heated on the grounds of the county clerk's office, I never once hated anybody, during that whole thing. definitely had to take a stand. And sometimes that stand wasn't easy to take, but it was very, very needed. And I don't want to get ahead of you or myself, but there was a couple of times that I really felt the Lord impressed me to read Scripture and to do something as an instrument of judgment that may be used one day. And one of those things was that the morning after, I guess, Kim was sent to jail and marriage license were going to be issued, I stood by the door and read Scripture out of Romans, and where it condemns homosexuality. And I felt the Lord told me to stand there and read that as a witness against them for an instrument of judgment. And so that's what I had to do. And we read we read about Sodom and Gomorrah. They were destroyed because of the bread of idleness, because of what come from the bread of idleness, which was homosexuality. And it is my firm belief that if America isn't held in judgment by God, then God will owe Sodom and Gomorrah an apology, because that's where that we've gotten as society, And so, and one of the things that it's referred to is sodomy in Scripture. And so, what occurred to me was that our government has legalized sodomy, And I feel sorry for the people, because they, for homosexuals and even straight who think it's okay, because they don't have the understanding spiritually of what that the mere endorsement is doing to our nation. So that's pretty much that's a glimpse of my heart.
You've told me a little bit about your participation in the protest, and I know that you led a prayer vigil. I know that's one thing you did. I know you did several things you just mentioned, reading the Scriptures there. Do you care to elaborate on maybe the first time that you led a prayer vigil there at the Round County Courthouse?
Absolutely. I'm glad you.
One of them was actually posted on Facebook. I saw.
Yes. I'm actually. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'd forgotten about that. But that was a very, very important part of it, and that was like the very first thing that we did. That where I was involved in. That was probably, looking back at it, that was probably the very moment that God said, "You're the man to do this," and put me out there. And we had. I made the announcement. I think it was on a Tuesday. I had made the announcement. No, it was on a Wednesday, because it was at church. I made the announcement at church that we was going to have a prayer vigil at the county clerk's office. And Friday is when we had, if I'm not mistaken, the prayer vigil. And we had a conservative estimate, I'm going to say around 50, but I have been told it was upwards around 75 to 100 that came out. And I mean, there's images of it, there's pictures of it, and so forth. And one could go and look at it and look at the huge circle that there was so many people there that it made. And I remember at that point thinking, oh my goodness, this is big, And I kind of had a Moses moment, because Moses, he was complaining to God, I can't do this, I can't do this. And I'm trying not to tear up here, but I remember thinking and praying, God, I can't do this. And he gave me the strength, gave me the wisdom. And it's something that I will always remember. And it's kind of like the psalmist who said, who am I that thou art mindful of? I mean, here I am, just a little boy from the mountains of Pike County. And God's using me the way that he used me for, if no other reason, to stand up for Scripture.
Right.
You know? And I've read about the Pauls of the Bible and the Timothys and, you know, and great men and women of God in Scripture, and about Ruth, and, you know, and here I am, you know, here I am in 2015, I'm being used, you know. And there was several times that I just had to kind of get by myself and say, God, are you sure? You sure you got the right guy? You know. And
did you feel like he said unto you the same thing he said to Moses, who made you man?
Yeah, you know, never really, I guess, was, people who know me know that I never have a problem with my mouth, but but it was more God, am I wise enough? You know, do I possess the wisdom to carry this out? And I've not been one to allow fear of what people think about me keep me from doing what I feel like I need to do. You know, I've often said, and it's somewhat truth, and some of it probably is not. But I've often said that I really don't care what people think about me. Well, I think just about everybody really cares what people think about them. But the intent that is expressed is that, in spite of what people think about me, I've got to do what I feel like I've got to do, you know. Right. And so that I think it was more Moses fought with, you know, I'm not eloquent enough in speech, you know, and while I'm not eloquent enough in speech either, my thought was, God, are you sure you got the right person? Because I'm not sure I possess the wisdom that it's going to take. Because the last thing I wanted to do was, I did not want to misrepresent God. I did not want to misrepresent Christ. I did not want, although I'm sure there are some detractors out there that have said this, but I did not want to give calls like David did. David gave calls to God's enemies to blaspheme against God. I did not want to do that. I did not want somebody to say, right there's the problem with Christianity. You know, now there's going to be some, because they are who they are. That's going to say, well, the Christians are the problem. You know, but that was my biggest fear, was to bring reproach against God, not so much against me. You know, because I know I've been enough battles spiritually and so forth. I know that no matter what I do, people are going to dislike me. You know, I know that. I've accepted it, and it's okay. You know, that's just like, quite honestly.
That's biblical.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, quite honestly, it's kind of funny, but I jokingly kid about coming on Morehead State campus, because I know that during that time, I probably did not gain very many friends from the campus of Morehead State University, you know, and especially Dr. Andrews, you know, because him and we had a few words through the media back and forth, you know. So I kindly told a cashier at a bank today that if he didn't see me tomorrow, to send a party looking for me. So anyway, but we have a good laugh out of it now. So. Yeah.
I will not be because of that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you wouldn't. So
there are some conservatives here, but there are some liberals also.
Yeah, I would think that the liberals probably outnumber the conservatives by a pretty good margin, and that's me saying that, not you. So.
You've kind of told me why the protests were important to you, because of the whole religious liberty.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. You can if you want to.
Well, sure. I mean, you know, we truly have a double standard right now going on in our nation. You can be Muslim, and you can pretty much get by with just about anything. But if you have Christian attached to your name, then you can't do that. And it's not a conspiracy theory, but it's fact. They want to silence Christians because we stand firm on what we believe. And we, I say we, not everybody, but we should, anyway, call out sin. And, one of the things that I often hear, even by good Christian people, and it's false, but they say, well, you're not supposed to judge. Well, that's not really what Scripture says, Scripture says that you shall know them by their fruit. How do you know an orange is an orange? Because you judge it to be an orange.
Right.
Because it has evidence that it's an orange, because it comes from an orange tree. How do you know an apple's an apple and not an orange? Because you judge, and you rightly judge what it is, and people judge every day. And those who say, well, you're not supposed to judge, they judge every day, every single day. Now, here's where that biblically, I cannot judge a person. When a person passes away, I cannot judge whether they're in heaven or hell. That's not mine to judge. That's God's, and God's alone, okay? But if I am out in sin, if I am going out on my wife, if I'm doing whatever that is sinful, then another minister or a Christian has every biblical authority and right to come to me and say, that's sin. Knock it off, They have that right. Biblically, they have that authority from God. And I often I love it whenever I'm having a conversation with Christians about this issue. And one of the things that I as you might be able to tell, is that I set people up to say certain things to get the truth out of them, right. And then God has blessed me with the ability to correct them. And one of the things that I have done in church before while teaching is talk about judging. Well, the Bible says thou shalt not judge, somebody will say, and judge not lest ye be judged, and all of this. And remove the mote out of your own eye before you cast it out of somebody else's, and all of these things. And then I will ask them, if your deacon was caught in sin, let's say your deacon had a homosexual affair, would you let him remain deacon? Or would you remove him? Well, we wouldn't stand for that. We'd remove him. You just judged. And it makes them think. Because the ideal of what judging is, in most people, their mind is, don't tell me how to live my life. That's not what we're doing. All we're doing is stating what the Bible says. I don't have to judge people. The Word of God already has. There's a set standard. We either live up to that standard or we don't. But don't cry about it if you're not living up to it and you get caught on it. And so religious liberty is so important, because if we lose our first and foremost fundamental right, guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States of America, we've lost everything. Everything. I mean, again, that is the very needle and the fabric that is tied to that needle that made America America, is because of religious liberty. And I had a guy who questioned, said, so you think that America should have religious freedom? I said, absolutely. He said, even for Muslims? I said, I would rather that America be a complete, strictly Christian nation. I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I said, I think that'd be the best. I said, but if a person wants to worship in their own way, then that's fine. It's religious liberty, And And that's going back on what I was saying a while ago about wisdom. That's the wisdom that I was praying to have, or questioning God if I had, because I knew that media, for the most part, you had to be very careful with what you said, because they would try to put a slant on it to the way that they felt was best,
Right.
And so there were some questions that they would ask that I refused to answer, and I would ask them, what does this have to do with this, and that's the whole goal, is to distract from the real issue. And the real issue, it's not Kim Davis, it's not Casey Davis or Kay Swartz, it is religious liberty. And the actual Constitution of the state of Kentucky states that if a county clerk were to issue a marriage license to a gay couple, then they would be immediately removed from office. So you had, out of the county clerks in the state of Kentucky, you had 3 of them that actually upheld the law. The rest of them broke it. And people want to say, and sometimes I'm not a fan of even Christian people, honestly, because they get things wrong too. And I've heard Christian people say, well, it's the law now. No, it isn't. Where have we have we gotten to the point where that we can allow a Supreme Court to dictate what law is and what law isn't? That's not what the Supreme Court was set up to do. It was there to interpret, yes, but it's not there to set.
Right.
The legislative body is the only body that can make a law, and the Supreme Court cannot supersede the authority of state constitutions, only if the people let it. And I've told people, the only way that this becomes a law is if you and I allow it to become a law, And so that's one of the things that really irks me about this whole thing, is that you had justices, lawyers more or less, say, oh no, it should be equal rights for them too. And they set a whole new, they disregarded centuries of marriage because of activist lawyers sitting on panel decided that marriage is no longer between a man and a woman. It's between a man and a man, as well as a man and a woman, or a woman and woman. And so it really brings up, I think, a legitimate question is, I'm sure that you've probably seen this foolish notion about some guy suing Kim Davis now because she won't issue a marriage license for him to marry his computer.
Oh, no.
Oh,
I
yeah.
am not familiar with that.
Yeah. That's just recent. That's been this week, I believe. So I was asked, what did I think about it? Or actually, I commented, I should say, on Facebook, because there were some comments made, and they were talking about how foolish it was, and I said, this is really no different than what happened a year ago, and it really isn't, because none of them go together, and what really bothers me is that we've gotten to a point in society where that because of political correctness, we have totally done away with centuries of the definition of marriage. And political correctness is something that I think is the downfall of the society that we've known in America for so long. Nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but you know what? I'm not going to stray away from the truth. I'm not going to stray away from the truth to keep from hurting somebody's feelings.
Right.
If my feelings have been hurt before, and you know what it made me do? It made me think, and it made me seek out what the truth was, and I'll be honest with you, I hate political correctness. I hate it with a passion, and I try to go out of my way to be politically incorrect, So I actually got to spend an hour with Matt Bevin, my son and I did, after he was elected governor, and we got to know him during the campaign. And one of the first things he did whenever he addressed the Commonwealth was opening statement is, I want to thank my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ. And I just, from ear to ear, I had such a smile on my face. And when I went up there, I said, first thing, Matt, I said, I want to thank you for invoking the name of Jesus in your address. And he kind of smiled. He said, I did it for two reasons. He said, one, because I'm sincere. He said, two, so that way I could watch the liberals squirm. And so that's me. That I said, you're a man after my own heart. That's it. So, but religious liberty, Sherry, is something that, and if we lose it, then we've lost everything. Everything that we know to be freedom depends upon true religious freedom. I'm not talking about, religious freedom for everybody but Christians. I'm talking about religious freedom, what was intended when this great nation was formed, That is what we have to preserve. And so it became less and less about Kim Davis, and it became more and more about religious liberty. Kim Davis would tell you herself, she was just used. She was in a position that God used her to bring about what came about, And before all this, I knew Kim Davis, but we wasn't really friends,
I wondered about that, if you had known her before.
Yeah, I'd go in and pay my taxes like everybody else, or, get whatever I needed. And, we would, hey, how you doing, whatever. And she would talk about, witnessing to people, a little bit. Just casual stuff. But we never had a relationship, outside of that.
Right.
And, during this whole time, especially at the beginning, I would call her and talk to her, ask her how she was doing. I'd go in and pray with her, and got to the point where that they told me, whenever I came in, they told me, next time you come, don't even worry about seeing if it's okay if you go back there, just go on to her office, and stuff. And so, that kind of relationship came about, and I became friends with her husband and her son Nathan, and her husband and I actually went to Tennessee, and I spoke at a religious liberty gathering at the Capitol down there, as I did here in Frankfurt.
Was that during all the events of last year or afterwards?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I think the one in Tennessee was shortly after. It was kind of on the tail end when everything was winding down. The one in Frankfurt was pretty much close to the beginning of everything. And that's another thing.
I knew there was one in Frankfurt.
Yeah. The Family Foundation, Kent Ostrander actually was responsible for putting it together. And Ken and I got to know each other again through my son. And so God, and that's one thing I want to make clear too, is that, I'm not the only one that God used. God used my wife, and God used my son, And through them, they were kind of like the door, Through them, they opened up, God used them to open up things for me to go through. And so, one of my spiritual, aspirations in life has been to preach to thousands of people, And that day, the media said around 7,000.
In Frankfurt?
Yeah, in Frankfurt, yeah. Other reports say there's around 10,000. So anywhere, and I'm a conservative estimate giver. I don't blow numbers up. So anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people I got to preach to. Wow. And God, God has just done that, and I'm like, why would you do that for me? Why would you do that for me? Allow me to have the distinct honor to represent you in this way, thankful, not complaining, but thankful, just in awe that he would do that. And I was at a men's gathering with my pastor once, and there was 20,000 plus men there, and he asked me, he said, would you be nervous to preach to these guys? I said, not a bit. I said, man, if God would bless me too, I said, it wouldn't bother me a bit, And so I got to preach to anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 anyway, And but I'm not satisfied. I want more. So,
Spoken like a true preacher.
Yeah.
Or at least from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
What about your immediate goal last year concerning, the town county clerk and her decision
Sure.
not to issue marriage license? What was your immediate goal?
My immediate goal was to.
I think I know,
Yeah,
but I'd like to hear it
yeah,
from you.
yeah. My immediate goal was to, number one, take a group of people to the Supreme Court and kick some folks out. But on a more realistic goal, my goal was to somehow thwart or get rid of gay marriage altogether. That was my immediate goal. Because I was like everybody else. This is wrong. This does not need to be happening. We need to take a stand. We need to get rid of this. But then God showed me. Elephant, one bite at a time. And so what the most pressing issue was, again, to preserve religious liberty. That was the whole issue. And so, not that I accepted the ruling, but I accepted the fact that America had turned the corner and was going to legally recognize same-sex marriage. But in the process of that, we could not stand by and let religious liberty become a casualty of it. So that's what it became. And that focus turned very fast, because the Lord showed me that you're fighting the wrong fight. You need to preserve religious liberty. So.
Was the environment safe when you were at these protests, or would you say it was unsafe?
In Morehead, I think it was relatively safe. Not at any time did I really fear for my safety, but I don't know. I really don't know if you could predict the environment, whether it would be safe or not, just by that statement, because I didn't give much thought to my personal safety. My son was punched in Ashland by an LGBT person. Definitely, yes, yeah.
Oh.
And it was kind of, looking back on it, was kind of funny, because I was in front of the federal courthouse. I was standing up on where the steps are, the railing, holding onto the railing with a loudspeaker in my hand, I think, or a mic or something, I can't remember. And anyway, I was relaying to the people what was transpiring and in the courtroom and all of this stuff. And I happened to glance over, and here's my son going after a cop. And so I'm trying to process that while I'm also trying to deliver what I was delivering. And so I had to take my focus off my son and get it back on what I was doing, because even though I love my son, what I was doing was more important than what he was doing at the time. I could deal with that later, but I had to deal with this now, And thankfully, Kim Davis's husband, Joe, was there and kind of pulled him back, because
pulled the LGBT.
Pulled my son. Yeah, pulled my son away from the cop, because he was going after the cop, because it happened right in front of the cop, and the cop did nothing about it.
Oh, okay.
Did nothing about it. And actually, the way I understand it, my son asked the cop, "Are you going to do anything about that?" And he said, "About what?" And from what I understand, he blatantly saw the punch, but he wasn't going to do anything about it. That's the double standard that I'm talking about. If my son had hit him, the LGBT guy, he would have went to jail, no doubt.
Well, I'm just curious about what transpired to get where he was actually punched.
It was if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was the day of the actual court hearing where Kim Davis was in court.
It was in Ashland.
Right. Okay. So it was during a recess, and it's when that Judge Bunning had ruled that she was in contempt and that she would spend time in jail. And so I went out at that point to address people, and they had already, of course, the media had already got to them, and it was a frenzy. It was a frenzy outside. People were just scattered. People, it is so hard to describe. But my group, if you want to call it that, and the homosexual side were clashing. They were coming together. And so I literally went down, turned my back on the homosexual side, And I told my people, I said, get back. I said, this isn't what this is about.
Right.
And so I stepped in and separated them and had them to go on down the sidewalk. And the cause of it was because of the frenzy that was taking place, because the homosexual side was dancing around and chanting, and more or less they were taunting the Christian side. And even comments during the whole time, even up here at the county clerk's office, is where's your God at now? And all of this. And here's the thing. People, and I definitely don't want to paint the homosexual side as being people that they're not, because I know that there's some people that are homosexual that are not mean, but people see a side from the homosexual community that isn't the only side. They see a poor victim, woe is me side, but they don't see that they only see what the media and the cameras show them. Okay, which is not going to be the taunting homosexual side. It's not going to be the name calling, the insulting, the where's your God at now, and the very vulgar and telling you what you can do with so and so, and all of this, and they don't see that side. No. We saw it firsthand. We saw it firsthand, and it did happen here in Morehead as well, not to the extent it did in Ashland, but it did happen here. And so that was the cause of the punch. Was they were going back and forth. Emotions was running high on both sides. And my son is a lot like me, where maybe I have a little bit more wisdom because I've lived longer, and I've in some probably respects I've learned to say things maybe in a different way. My son says that I'm the only person he knows that can compliment somebody while slapping them with the words, and the people not even realize it. I've learned that over the years, where it used to be I would just tell you what I thought and be rude about it, or it come across that way. I can still do that, but I prefer not, But so I really don't know what the words was that was transpired during that time, but I know that there was a frenzy going on, and the homosexual side was taunting the Christian side. And the Christian side, of course, was upset and angry because of what we feel was the unjust ruling of Judge Bunny. And I was there for the entire court hearing, every minute of it.
Were you inside?
I was inside, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were coming out and reporting
right.
as
what was going on.
Things
yes.
happened. And I know there were several that were not from Rowan County that appeared at Ashland. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I wasn't there, but
yeah.
I understand that there were
yeah.
from both sides. Is that correct?
Yeah. Very much so. There was, I think, 2 gatherings at Ashland. I think 1 in Covington. The first one in Ashland, it was reported, I think, that there was like 50 people from the Christian side that was there. There was well over probably 200 people that was there, and that was reported from the Morehead News. 200 from the Christian side. Yeah, okay. Yeah. But it was only reported that there was like 50. That was the first gathering in Ashland, and so I kind of got on to the reporter who reported that, and then I had to go back and hug her and say, look, it's okay, and so it was kind of funny because I asked her, I said, I've been kind of mean to you, ain't I? she said, yes, you have. So, but anyway, we're okay now. So,
good.
Yeah.
Were your tactics effective?
I think so.
I know some of your tactics. I know one was prayer.
Oh, absolutely. That was probably the most dominant tactic was prayer. We did preach on the courthouse lawn as well as in Ashland. But my tactic, my goal was to unite Christians, to bring a sense of really to bring a sense of self-worth within the Christian community, because we've been dogmatized so much, and we've been beat back and beat down, and there's from a Christian perspective, there's very little or very few victories to celebrate, legally, that it's refreshing, to see something happen for the good. And I feel like that what our goal was accomplished. It was accomplished through a different governor, but Governor Beshear, he had political motives, and his son Andy, and the whole thing, my whole strategy where that was concerned was to put pressure on Steve Beshear to issue an executive order to remove the clerk's names. And I felt like that it was very effective until another outside group came to town, and it distracted from what the strategy was. So I got word from a representative, House of Representative. He's a state representative, that he's a minister, and I actually was at the rally up in Grayson, not the big rally, but the week before that. Well, I was at that rally also, at the big rally, but the rally before that I spoke there also. And
before she was let out of prison, there was one in Grayson.
Yes, yeah, there was actually two. There was two rallies. There was a smaller rally, and then the big rally where Mike Huckabee was there and Ted Cruz was there.
The one before, was that while she was in prison?
I'm thinking that
Or
yes,
jail.
yes, yeah, it was because I remember leading a chant. Thank you, Kim, when I spoke. Yes, so she was in jail at the time. So we were at both rallies, but at the Mike Huckabee rally, when she was freed, I had a state representative actually seek me out, come to me, and thank me for what I was doing. And I asked him, I said, is the governor hearing what I'm saying? And he looked me dead in the eye. He said, believe me, he's hearing you. And what I was doing, I was calling two groups of people out, okay? I was calling the governor out, but I was also calling the Christians out. And what I said about the governor was that it was about time that the governor actually be the leader that he was voted in to be, quit hiding behind the walls of the Capitol, and actually get out and lead this state to resolve this matter by issuing an executive order. And that was my constant theme. Every time I talked to the media, I was lambasting that particular point, And word got to me that he was feeling the pressure, okay? And I went ahead and I made it known that the reason, I would follow that up with the reason that the governor is not issuing an executive order and is hands off is because his son was running for attorney general, and if he said anything, it would compromise the donations, the political funding from the LGBT. And that was never refuted, never. And so I led a small group of ministers to Frankfurt to see the governor. It was reported that they didn't know I was coming. But then, when we walked in, there was the security officer, and then over here to the side was the ladies, I guess they're the receptionists or whatever, and they greeted us, and they said, Pastor, it's so good to see you. We've been expecting you. We've got everything set up for you. Okay. And they led us down the hallway.
To see Steve Beshear.
We went into a conference room. And then his chief of staff came in, and I can't remember what the other guy, his particular position was. But this chief of staff came in, and this other guy came in, and they said, the governor's unavailable. And we would like to, he has sent us to hear your concerns. And so I proceeded to ask him, I said, so where is the governor? Well, we're not at liberty to say. I said, so is he in the building? Well, we can't really say. And I said, is he in the state? He said, well, I don't know. I said, you don't know where the governor is? You know? And so he was like, well, the governor just can't. I said, you mean the governor doesn't want to be here? You know? And so as we left, we were greeted with a host of media, you know, and so it was a pretty big deal, and I think it really made Governor Beshear look bad, to the point that I noticed a few months ago that it was reported, I think, by Morehead News after the fact that Steve Beshear was in town, and he had already left when they reported this. Even today, I would like to talk to Steve Beshear. You know, and I really believe that there's a segment of this community that did not want it published that Steve Beshear was in town because of that. Because I would have been there.
Right.
You know, I would have. So
you think he was in Morehead on that day that you were?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. He was. This has been just recently that he was here in Morehead, just recently, but it wasn't published that he was here. And the reason that I think that it wasn't published here is because there was pressure on him while he was governor,
right?
And they didn't want anything carried over from that, more or less from me, which
right.
probably would have been. You know, I would have been there, you know, and tried to get an audience with him and talk to him. But they said the day that we went to Frankfurt, they reported to, I think, WHAS that they did not know that we were coming. But they greeted us and, Pastor, we've been expecting you, you know, and all of this stuff, and treated us really well. I mean, they treated us super nice. And I remember Larry Bond, I believe was his name, the chief of staff. He said, well, you know, this is a separation of church and state. Y'all believe in separation of church and state, don't you? And I said, no. I said, that is the most foolish thing I've ever heard in my life. You know, and he just kind of dropped his mouth like, what? You know? And so I had to educate him that the separation of church and state is not even mentioned in the Constitution of the United States of America, you know? And that it was simply a letter that was written by, I believe, Thomas Jefferson to Dansbury Baptist minister, because the Dansbury Baptist minister expressed a concern that this new government would overreach and involve itself in the matters of the church, like the old nation did, where they come from. And so Thomas Jefferson was replying and said, that cannot happen, that will not happen, because there is a wall of separation between the government and the church. And that wall of separation was there not to keep the church out of government, not to keep the Kim Davises from holding office, okay, or Casey Davises or Kay Swartz, but it was there to keep the government out of the church, not the church out of the government. And but it just makes me shake my head in disbelief that people are so naive that they fall for such nonsense. Well, it's separation of church and state. We got to live by that. Where is that? You know, and you know, some people mean well. They just speak out of ignorance. You know, not knowing. You know, some people though, they know, but they use it to their advantage, to advance their agenda. And that is where we are. The LGBT has an agenda. The liberals have an agenda. And political correctness is at the head of that agenda, because political correctness, under the umbrella of political correctness, you get all of this stuff that's coming about, every bit of it. And it is a danger to society, definitely.
What would you have done differently, if anything? I really can't put my finger on anything I would have done differently.
there was a Christian organization that came into town that distracted from the main strategy that I had with the governor. That it was Operation Save America. They may be a good ministry, I don't know, but that day, that time, they were out of place. And you know, here's the thing about it, Sherry. The homosexual community that was down there, the people that was down there, they see one side of Randy Smith. You know, they seen the fiery preacher who, you know, was standing against what they call equality, which that's not really what they want, you know. But so they see what they would call in layman's terms a jerk, you know, because they're opposing what they want, you know. But what they may not know is that when Operation Save America came to town, they started, I would always try to address my crowd. And I would turn my back on the homosexual side so that way I would not be addressing them. And
what is Operation Save America?
It is a ministry, and I'm sure that they probably do good things. And on the surface, I would be for what that they stand for. You know, on most cases, they're an organization that stands against abortion, that protests abortion clinics.
This is not the Westboro group?
No, that's a different group, which I withstood against them also. Okay. But Operation Save America, they came to town. They're from Texas, North Carolina, and Tennessee, and Ohio, different places. They came to town. And a gentleman by the name of Ante, him and I kind of got into it because they were using descriptions of homosexuals that should never be. I did not want that part of what was going on. And I noticed, it really bothered me because I noticed on TV, on the news, it would show me and my group, and it'd say supporters of Kim Davis or supporters of religious liberty. But then when they showed them, they would also have the heading, supporters of Kim Davis. So they were grouping us together.
Right.
And I did not want to be grouped together with that.
Did they show up also in Ashland?
They did.
Do you know if they were some of the ones that had the bullhorn?
They were. They were the ones.
Making remarks.
Yeah, they were the ones. And I did not realize it at the time, but I literally used one of their mics when all of that was going on with my son. You know, I didn't realize that at the time. You know, things were so somebody handed me a mic, you know, so I used it, you know. Later on, you know, I come find out that that's who they were. So they came to Morehead. And the whole time I was addressing my people, well, they started getting the bullhorn out, and they started speaking directly to the homosexual side and talking about how many STDs you all have, and, you know, calling them names, and, you know, and God hates, you know, and all this stuff. And so I started to speak, and he said, "Here, Pastor, take," you know. So I took it, and I said, we need, and I was telling everybody, so we need to address this side and leave that side alone, you know. And so I thought that might would take care of it. Well, it didn't. When he got it back, he started preaching to him again, or, you know, I wouldn't call it preaching, but anyway. So anyhow, I went over and I spoke to the head man from Texas over Operation Save America. And I'm sure he was a very nice gentleman. Through this whole thing, he was nice to me. But this guy, Ante, was standing there. And I was talking to this man, and I said, listen, I said, we don't need to be doing what you're doing. You know, this is not the right way to do this, you know. And I proceeded to tell him, I said, you guys have disrespected me and these local Christians that have come out. And he was like, how have we disrespected? I said, because, I said, you have come here with a different agenda. And I said, let me give you some advice. Next time you go into somebody else's community where you don't live, and you deal with I said, the first thing you need to do is you need to seek out the spiritual leader that is heading everything up. And you need to say, how can we help you before you start doing anything? You know, I said, because we had a strategy, and I said, because of you all, that strategy is no longer effective.
Right.
And so this guy, Auntie, he steps in, and you need to be respecting this guy, and all of this stuff. I mean, he was just, I don't know what he was talking about, but anyway, I said, why don't you just go somewhere else? And he said, why don't you make me? And all of this stuff. Yeah. And I mean, I'm a man, and I Lord forgive me. I came back, I said, let's do it, And so the guy that I called him Tex, he said, guys, come on, let's not do this, And then I got my head about me, and so anyway, I told the guy from Texas, I said, listen, I said, the best thing that if y'all really want to help us, I said, load up and leave. Right. I said, because you're not going to live here. And I said, these people, although they're wrong, and although you and I agree that homosexuality is sin and that it is wrong in the eyes of God and it should not be part of this nation, I said, I've yet got to minister to these people if I possibly can. Right. And so what the homosexual side does not realize is that they actually had somebody on the other side taking up for them, in a sense, And so this Ante guy, he's from North Carolina, and I asked him, I said, do y'all have this problem in North Carolina? He said, yeah. I said, go back there then. I said, don't come up here. Go back there. Take care of it, And so they left. They left.
Oh, they did.
They did leave.
Yeah.
They packed up and left. And Matt Sparks, the sheriff, and the deputies, they literally thanked me, and it's so neat, Sherry, because even they started looking to me to take care of some stuff, and they thanked me. They appreciated how that I diffused the situations that was there, right? And kept my people, from. I wouldn't even let my people interact, say things back and forth when they started to. I mean, I hushed several of them. I probably hurt their feelings, because hey, we're not here for that. Stop it. Right. Don't do that. It's not going to do any good. There's nothing going to be edified. There's nothing going to be accomplished by that. I said, some of those people, that's what they want. They want to engage you in that. I had one young lady come over and was making fun and, asking ridiculous questions, and one of the ladies that she was talking to was falling for it. And I came up, I said, no, we're not going to do this. And I took her by the arm. I said, if you want to talk, we'll go over here and talk, And so I tried to talk to her, but she wasn't there for that, so.
I think we've already talked about this, but do you believe that your involvement in the protests made a difference in the outcome? I think I know the answer.
Yeah.
On some of these, I think I know the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that initially it was, we can't allow this to happen. We can't allow, homosexuals to get married. That was the initial response by most of the community. After they realized and after they listened to me speak and so forth, they realized, there's really nothing we can do about that. What we've got to do is we got to focus on preserving religious liberty. And I really believe with all my heart, a football game, the goal of both teams is to, at the end of the game, have more points. That signifies the victory. That's their goal. Right. Well, the one that has the most points, they achieve their goal. They win the game. Okay, they have the victory. Mm-hmm. Our goal was to get the county clerk's name off of the marriage license. That became our goal. Has that been achieved? Yes, it has. So we obtained our goal. We've won the victory. In that, Kim Davis still has her job, Casey Davis still has his, and Kay Swartz has hers. So a Christian in Kentucky in this situation has not lost their job because of the stand that they took, because of religious conviction. So we have, we obtained our goal.
Do you think that the Rowan County Clerk, Kim Davis, best represented the cause of religious liberty?
That is that is something that she would probably, and I will answer it in my opinion, but that is something that she would probably be better suited to answer from her perspective. At one point I did ask her, Kim, are you sure there's not a better legal way? And her answer was, brother, there may be, but this is what I feel that I've got to do it this way. I was, okay, Kim displayed something in the courtroom that I don't know that I could have displayed. When the judge, and that's something I would like to talk about too, is that courtroom hearing. But that,
Go ahead.
when the judge looked at her and said, it would do no good to fine her because somebody will pay for her. So I'm going to sentence her to jail indefinitely until she changes her mind. And he said, marshals, would you please take her in custody? The thing that touched my heart that I don't know I could have done is when she got up, she looked at the judge and she said, thank you, Judge. And she walked out. Now myself, I see myself as more of the John the Baptist calling out Herod
Right.
for having his brother's wife. That's who I see me, And there was a term in the biblical days of whitewashed, that term probably would have come to mind, The court hearing was an absolute joke. It was truly a joke. I mean, even if I was not a supporter of religious liberty and sat in that, I would have thought this is a joke because the cards were stacked, okay? There was, obviously, there was, I think, 2 vans or 3 vans from the Carter County Jail already there. There were extra attorneys already in the courtroom, sitting separately from everybody else. He even made a statement that once
The judge made
yes,
the
yeah. The judge made a statement that after he had sentenced Kim and Kim had left the courtroom, he said, "Now I have on hand these attorneys to provide you deputy clerks, an attorney, and I'm going to give you a few minutes with them to discuss your options." So he already had his ruling made up before he got into the courtroom. It was already there. Everything was already in place. And Kim was testifying. She was on stand, and her lawyer was asking questions. So her lawyer asked a question, and the ACLU attorney, he objected. The judge kind of sat back, and he looked over at Kim, and then he looked at her lawyer. Then he looked at the ACL lawyer, and he said, it's not going to matter anyway, overrule. And that was expressly what he said, almost word for word. And I was like, wow, really? And it was such a blatant, we're only going through the formalities of this court hearing, but you're getting ready to go to jail. He had already made up his mind, And the LGB side were cheering at things, and if he did,
they were cheering inside
the courtroom, saying things, and if anything, he would pound his gavel a couple times, and that was it, And but then I got to do. I was doing some research, and I found out that David Bunning, the judge, had ruled against the Boyd County School District, sympathizing with a homosexual group that had come through, and literally tried to make, I believe, the students as well as maybe the parents take classes that were sympathetic with homosexuality. And of course it went to higher court and he was overruled. But there was precedence there that he was sympathizing with the homosexual movement and community. So he, in my opinion, should not even been able to preside over it to begin with.
Right.
And so I had talked to Kelly Shackelford in Lexington at a religious liberty event that it was more or less a seminar that I went to. And afterwards, I asked him, I said, Kelly, let me ask you a question. I said, I'm not asking you to speak against the methods or the methodology of the current attorneys. I said, but is this a case that could be won? He said, absolutely. Absolutely. He said, if you check our record, we've won many cases. And he said we would approach it a whole new way, a whole different way. And he said there's precedents to show that this case could be won. And so that's when I went back to Kim and I said, Kim, are you sure about this? Are you sure that there's not a different strategy? And that's when she told me that, this is the way that she felt led. So I said, okay. So myself, if it was me, yeah, I think being the person that Kim is, and Kim's been painted to be a horrible person. She's not. She's been said to have been married and divorced, I don't know how many times, 4 or 5 times, whatever. But the thing that people don't say is that she remarried her husband, or one of her husbands. So, and the things that she did during that time, she was not a Christian, but yet they want to say, well, you can't judge, so it's a complete double standard, They don't want anybody to judge when it comes to judging them, but they don't care to. And they preach and holler tolerance, but they don't want to tolerate me,
right?
Or others like me. So there's a huge double standard, and but if it had been me, I think I would have been out for blood, that would have been my mentality. My mentality would be, oh, you want to lock me up? Go ahead and lock me up. I really don't care. But first, before you do, I'm going to give you a good reason, because I'm getting ready to tell you, Judge, exactly what I think of you. That would have been me.
Right.
Kim Davis, though, was, thank you, Judge, and walked away. And that really touched me. It really did. And in a sense, I'm like, man, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could be that humble,
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I could is if God just muzzled my mouth and let me probably say those words, and that was it, because I'm a person that's very passionate about what I believe in. There's an old country song. I don't listen to country music very often, except for when my son's in the car and plays it, but and I have to endure it then. But anyway, somebody once sung a song, wrote a song. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, and that there's truth in that. And the type of person that I am, I don't care who disagrees with me. Disagree with me all you want to, that's fine. But don't pretend to like me if you don't. If you don't like me, just say, I don't like you. You're not going to hurt my feelings. If you do, I'll get over it. I like to know where people stand, right at the beginning, right up front, because that's the way I am, And, I people that I don't necessarily agree with, I still can respect them if they will respect me,
right?
But honestly, if I was to put it in Randy Smith's layman terms, is I feel like that we have a society of a bunch of crybabies, whining over every little thing, when people just need to get over it. There's more to life than the silliness that's going on, So yeah, I probably would have done some things differently.
What do you think made Kim be able to just look at that judge and say thank you? Like you said, what do you think?
That's probably the most probing question so far. And it really,
that's not
yeah,
something I had planned to ask.
Right. That really gives me pause to think again. Kim, if you ever spend any time with Kim, Kim's a very, she does not care a bit to tell you exactly what she thinks about something, but she maintains, and she can maintain, a graceful attitude during it all, and that's what she had. She had a graceful attitude, and the only thing that I could think of is that she was humbled because she too felt overwhelmed that God was using her. Again, I don't think I would have been able to do that. I think I would have been, okay, Judge, but you're getting ready to sentence me for more than 5 days because I'm getting ready to tell you really what I think. So,
What do you think jail was like? And that's not, something I planned to ask, but what do you think jail was like for her when she was actually, what was it, 3 days?
5 days,
Oh,
yeah, 5
okay.
days, yeah. The way it was described to me, it wasn't that the hardest part was being away from family. She was separated from all other inmates. The staff was extremely nice to her, from what I understand. They just, I hate to say it, and I'm sure it was not a vacation, but if you could have a vacation in jail, she probably had it, from what I've been told. The judge did not accomplish what he set out to accomplish. And that's another thing. During a court hearing, the whole thing was to make Kim Davis an example, to scare her deputies into submission. That's what it was about. That's exactly what it was about. And Nathan Davis, her son, I'm very, very pleased with his answer, because the judge asked him first, said, what is your answer? Will you issue a marriage license or no? He made it plain, if you say no, you're going to jail.
Right.
And the lawyer for Nathan spoke up, said, Judge, could you please come back to him later? And he said, sure. So he asked everybody else, and everybody else said, well, although I'm not in favor of it, if I have to, I will. I don't want to go to jail. Some broke down crying, and I understand the fear, and, I know probably some Christians have been a little bit too hard on those who said, yeah, if I have to, I will. Myself, I wouldn't have. I would have said, are you kidding me? No. Throw me in jail, I'm not going to do it, But when it came back around to Nathan, the judge said, well, I assume, young man, that you're not going to, so I won't even ask you because I don't want to have to send you to jail, And Nathan told him, said, no, I won't, And he was ready. He's 21, 22, 23,
Yeah.
Young man, married, and I ain't doing it. I'm not going to do it, and those are the true heroes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the true heroes, who have a lot to lose, but they risk losing it for a principle that they believe in, and so, again, go back on what the law of the Constitution of the state of Kentucky said, was that they could not issue those licenses. So they were being instructed and ordered by a federal judge to actually break the law, and to go against the Constitution of Kentucky. What I called for, what I was hoping would happen, was that Judge Bunning would be removed from his position. That's what I was hoping for. It was kind of neat because we were before the trial began. There was a lot going on outside, and I was speaking, and I was the very one he was talking about. And leading up to that court day, I instructed people in this area to call his office and to flood his phone with calls. Well, he made mention. He said, not only have I not been able to use my phones for the past week, he said, I have heard what's been said outside, and I just kind of grinned and, looked right at him, and we were close enough that we could have carried on a conversation, so during that time, and I will say this, I'm very, very disappointed in Cecil Watkins as well as Doc Blevins. And I've told them both of that face to face. Doc and I, we have a strange relationship. It was kind of funny because my wife, again, she started it, but she saw Doc Blevins and she said, "I'm disappointed in you, Doc. I really am." And he kind of hung his head. And next day she seen him and she said, "Doc, I'm praying for you." And he said, "Thought you was disappointed in me." And she said, "Well, I am, but I'm praying for you." And so every time that we saw him for a good while, no doubt when we left, he was scratching his head and saying, "I can't figure these guys out." Because, I went into his office and I said, this was at the regular, I said, "Doc, where do you stand on this?" "Well, it is the law." And I said, "Doc, stop." I said, "You know better than that junk." I said, "You know as well as I do, it's not the law." I said, "It's a ruling." I said, "Don't give me that." And so I kept cutting him off. Everything he tried to say, I kept cutting him off, And I told him, I said, "Here it is, Doc." I said, "I'm just going to tell you." I said, "People are disappointed in you because they feel like you have betrayed your heritage." And there was total silence in his office. And he said, "Well, I hope not." I said, "That's exactly how people feel about you." And now, he'll see me, "Hey, Reverend, how you doing?" And he never knows what he's going to get, And so, speaking of which, I need to go see him. I haven't seen him in a while. But then Cecil, because they both testified in court that day, and it was not in favor of Kim. And Cecil came out, and we took a recess. And I came out, and I was almost as close as I am to you from him. I saw him over in the hallway, and I went over to him. I said, "Shame on you, Cecil." I said, "Shame on you," and he just hung his head. And after that, he would not look at me for days on end. Even on the streets, he would not. He would just put his head down and not look at me because he knows that he did wrong. He's ashamed, And so... I did an interview with the Daily Independent the other day, and they asked me what life has been like since. And it's kind of ironic because everybody I meet on the street or in Walmart or wherever, I'm waiting for some type of response, Right. And sometimes I get a look and it makes me wonder, okay, are they looking at me in admiration and thanking me, or are they looking at me in disgust and saying, "How dare you?" And so, and not too long ago, I actually stopped in at McDonald's I think it was at the big McDonald's, I'm not sure, one of the McDonald's. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that I was recognized, and my wife said that she saw him pour something from another cup into my cup. And so I took a drink of it. It didn't really taste right, and I thought, I'm not drinking it. So I poured it out. I don't know if there was anything, but that is the mentality that is up here, is that every time I eat out, and it's not so much now as what it was, especially during the time and right after, but it still lingers. It's still there, because I've gotten pretty good reading people's looks somewhat. And, especially young college kids, because I called out Morehead State. I called out Dr. Andrews quite a bit, during that time. And so, it makes me hesitant to eat, out. And
because of the repercussions,
right,
you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And, especially some of the fast food restaurants where there's young college kids, And I went through the line at Morehead State, or not Morehead State, but McDonald's sometime back, and young lady came across the intercom there, "Welcome to McDonald's, can I take your order?" And I gave her my order, and she's just as sweet, precious, and nice. And got up, paid for it, and went on up to pick up my food. And she was looking at, and then reaching the food out bag, and, she had this nice little countenance on her. She looked and she saw me, and her whole countenance just changed. I know she recognized me. And I started laughing. I said, "Man," I said, "looks could kill," And she shut the window, And so, yeah, there's been things like that big time. And, I've run into some of the gay couples that either male or female that was down there, and they don't want to even look at me, or anything, and which that's okay. I mean, I understand. It is what it is. We're not going to rub elbows, that's for sure. I understand that. But it does. I work at Walmart, and as my bread and butter. And I had a young lady there when I first started. She said, "Aren't you a preacher?" And I said, "Yeah." I really didn't think I'd get hired on at Walmart, to be honest with you, because I know that some of them there in management know who I am, you know. But it's just, but I did, and that's a whole different God story there. But anyway, she said, "Aren't you a preacher?" And I said, "Yeah, this is like my first week there." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I thought so." So we didn't have time to expand. So anyway, a couple of days later, I saw her in the office, and so I was standing there. I said, "So, young lady, tell me, how'd you know I was a preacher?" And I started smiling, and she said, "You really want to know?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Because I recognize you from the Kim Davis issue." So my son and I was walking around Walmart the other day, and she now works on days. And anyway, we were coming like from the back, and I think we went to the restroom or something. She came out, and I greeted her, and I said, "Hey, this is my son Randy." And I said, "Hey, son," I said, "This is the young lady who asked me," and I told her, because I told him about the experience. And she started laughing. She said, "Yeah," she said, "I'm the person," she said, "when you asked me how that I knew," she said, "I knew that you knew the answer." And I said, "Well," I said, "that's about like me. I just wanted to hear you say it," So anyway, I try to have fun with it, try to lighten it up a little.
That is spoken like a true preacher.
So, oh my.
I'm looking to see if there's something we haven't covered. I haven't asked you this, and again, I think I know, but do you think she deserved to be imprisoned?
Absolutely not. Actually, the judge does, but not her. No, she does not.
You think she should have received any punishment?
Absolutely not. No. If we get to the point, we are almost there, but if we get to the point where Christians cannot serve in public office and serve their nation because of conviction, then we've lost our nation. And we are almost there, Okay, you've got, that I can remember, 2 bakeries, both of them fined and closed down more or less, because they would not participate in a homosexual wedding. All right? Okay, that is absolutely nonsense for them to fine them and to do what that they did. And if I don't want to serve somebody because they have committed adultery on their wife, and I've got conviction about it, then I shouldn't have to. Here's where that we've come, and I'm going to say the opposition has been very articulate, and they have been very wise in how that they've come about this, because they've made this whole thing about homosexuality about race. It's inherited. I can't help it because I'm that way. So therefore, just as the civil rights issue of the 60s, this is my civil right, I can't help it because I was born this way, all of this stuff. And now we're seeing this transgender junk come down the pike, and I'm not politically correct, so, but, all of this stuff that's coming about. And it's because of the political correctness of our nation. And homosexuals, I don't care what they say, homosexuals are not born homosexual. They're not born that way. They choose to be that. But they have articulated and they have gotten people to start believing that they are born that way. So therefore, it now becomes a civil right. That's the approach that they have taken, and they are succeeding. They're succeeding because we have liberal activists in high places in our nation. And I wish we had somebody run for president, but we don't. But we've got to take our nation back. And again, the homosexual crowd that was up there, they're not to blame for this. I mean, they're really not. They're just doing what they're allowed to do. Steve Beshear is the one that's totally responsible for the entire fiasco that took place back in the summer. It is his fault 100%, because if he was the leader that he should have been, I don't care if he's Democrat, Republican, Independent, black, white, or whatever, if he was the leader that he should have been, he would have anticipated a possible Supreme Court ruling, had something already enacted in place, and when it became a ruling, he would have enacted that, he would have issued an executive order, whatever he had to do, and all of that would have been resolved. He had the power to do it. That was proven by Matt Bevin, because within the first 30 days, boom, he did it.
Right.
And so Steve Beshear is the one that honestly needs to be held responsible for what happened in Morehead. Absolutely.
What were your thoughts upon Kim Davis' release?
I didn't think she'd get out that soon. I really did. I was actually doing a live radio show with Sam Rohr of the American Pastors Network. And by the way, I am the president and CEO of the newly formed Kentucky Pastors Network. But I was doing a live radio program, and he asked me, he said, we've been told there are rumors that she's getting released today. I said, no. I said, I haven't heard anything, because Mike Huckabee was there, and we understand that Mike Huckabee is lobbying to get her release. And I said, that may happen. I said, but I don't look for it. I mean, I totally dispelled it. And then lo and behold, she's released. Wow, boy, was I wrong,
Right.
And so see, I can't admit when I'm wrong, but sorry, it's coming out at me.
That goes to prove it, right?
Yeah, that's right. So, but yeah, I was totally amazed. I thought she would stay in there a few more days anyway. Definitely, but she was released. So.
We've talked about media just a little bit earlier in this conversation. Do you think the media attention this event received was appropriate?
I think that the coverage, them being here, was appropriate. I do not believe that the content used was necessarily appropriate.
Okay.
They slanted it. Many outlets did, of course. It's not all media personnel are liberal. Not all media outlets are liberal. But, we know they have an agenda, And so I was not upset that the media was here.
Right.
I was a little bit upset at some of the media content, For an example, and I keep coming back to Morehead State and Dr. Andrews, but I'll just tell you this, I think this was probably interesting, but Dr. Andrews had made a statement, something to the effect that he feels that elected officials should do their job or resign or something to that effect. Okay. So while I was down there was a young man and young girl from Morehead State come, and they asked me if they could interview me, and I said, well, sure. I said, so who you with? And they said, Morehead State. I grinned, and I said, sure, absolutely, please. And so anyway, they interviewed me, and at the end they said, do you have anything else you'd like to say? And I said, yeah. I said, I do actually. I said two things. I said, the reason we have this issue here in Morehead is because of Morehead State University. And their whole countenance changed, and they were like, what? I can't believe you said that. I said, Morehead State University has a liberal overtone to it, And I said, the reason that this issue is here is because of Morehead State University. And I said, secondly, I said, Dr. Andrews needs to take care of Morehead State University. He has his hands full there. I said, so he needs to take care of Morehead State University, And it was like I just absolutely blasphemed or something, And so anyway, I heard Dr. Andrews, he replied to that somehow through the media. I can't remember exactly what he said, other than he said that, no, this issue is not because of Morehead State University. There are LGBT factions that are here off campus, and all this blah blah stuff, and so I got to respond, and I said, okay. I said, let's just suppose that there are some LGBT organizations off campus. I said, but why did they come here? Did they not go to Morehead State? Did they not come here because of Morehead State, their liberal-leaning policies? And so if we were playing chess, then I would have said checkmate, because that was the truth, And I'm not against Morehead State University. I'm against the liberal-leaning factions of Morehead State University, because the LGBT, the only reason that the LGBT came here, the only reason they formed is because they had people here that leaned that way. And the reason that they had people here that leaned that way is because of Morehead State University, the liberal-leaning side of it. So I thought that was interesting. And then I read where, I'm trying not to smile, but I read where that Dr. Andrews was censored, and when I read that, I just kind of grinned a little bit, and then I heard that he was retiring, and then I smiled a little bit and said yes, and so I'm trying not to be mean. I really am. Sometimes it's like goo, it just oozes out, but hopefully they will get a conservative, or at least a more conservative president. I hope. I was very pleased with the powers that be at Morehead State, that they censored President Andrews, because I feel like that he was overstepping what his job role was. His job role is to take care of Morehead State University. It's not anything else. So
I was going to ask you if you had any more thoughts on that. But, maybe, do you have any more thoughts? Because I think we're getting close to
the end. Yeah.
Yes.
It's. I really. I don't. There's something else I was wanting to say, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think that this is an event, obviously, that will go down in history in Morehead.
Do you think it drew the county and the people closer together or farther apart?
I was asked during the whole time, has this split the county? And I really do not think that it split the county. I think what happened was Morehead leans liberal because of the presence of Morehead State University. Rowan County is more conservative. So there was already this faction. And it's kind of like if you put a liberal and a conservative in the same room together, but they don't tell each other they're liberal and conservative, then they can get along, as long as they stay off of God and politics, yeah, but the only thing, if there was any difference there, any splitting or whatever, it was already there. It just hadn't surfaced, because there are people who do not believe in homosexuality, that it should not exist, and then there are people who say, well, it's my right, and equality is not what they're after, because obviously, Sherry, here's the truth of the matter, okay? The truth of the matter is there are things that you can do that I can't, and there are things that I can do that you can't. Chances are you could probably lift something heavier than I can. Okay. Actually, I might be better with a hammer than you are.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay. So we're unequal.
Right.
So what are they going to do about that? They're going to ban all hammers because you can't do as well with a hammer as I can? You know? That's where we're going. Equality. It's not equality. To have this notion or nonsense about everybody needs to be equal, it sounds more like socialism to me than anything. You know? And that is what drives the whole liberal agenda. And so since you can't drive a nail as good as I can, we're going to do away with all nails and all hammers. Because you know what? I don't want you to feel offended. You know? It's nonsense. You know? And my Eastern Kentucky personality would just say it's plain stupid. You know? Because we're spending all of this energy and all of this time on putting bubble wrap around everybody, you know, that we're missing the bigger picture, which is people are dying every day. They're dying lost. They're going to a devil's hell, you know. But yet we're too worried about hurting somebody's feelings, you know. Let them go to hell, but we don't want to hurt their feelings, you know. And what really gets me is people say, well, I don't really believe in God. Or, well, you know, I have my own belief in God. You know, whether you believe in God or whether you have your own belief in God does not change the fact that one day you're going to stand before God. You know? And there's only one way to heaven, and that's through and by the blood of Jesus Christ. It's not Buddha, it's not Muhammad, and it sure isn't Oprah. You know? So there's only one way. You know, and it's not my way, it's not your way, it's not somebody else's way, it's not a liberal's way, it's not a conservative way, it's not a Democrat's way, it's not a Republican's way. The only way is through and by the blood of Jesus Christ. You know, and that's it. So, you know, I ran for state representative. I lost in the primary, and I can say that graciously because with less than $1,000 to spend on my campaign, I only lost by 176 votes. I won one county, almost won Lewis County, and of course I conceded Rowan County a long time ago, but you know, I lost Rowan County. So my goal was to win Lewis County by a large margin and Elliott County, and pretty well know that I would probably lose Rowan County. You know, and again. It's because of a low turnout, and I did not have the money to spend on it. And something real quick, I'll say this, something I found interesting was, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I had a very, very good source to tell me that Mitch McConnell had, donated and funded my primary opponent's campaign. If that's true, I don't know if it is or not, but if that's true, then it's even a greater victory for me in a sense. Even though I lost the election, I won. Right. Because my message was out there, as well as I did what I felt like God wanted me to do, the most important thing. But then also, for somebody that's never run for office before, to come 176 votes away from winning their first ever election, okay, with spending less than $1,000. But on top of all that, if it's true that Mitch McConnell funded my opponent's campaign, then I came 176 votes away from beating Mitch McConnell. Right. You know, if that's true. So, which I have a very good reliable source says it is. I tend to believe it is, but I don't know for sure it is. So, who knows what God has in store? You know, I'm just, you know, I was born in 1970. If I die in 2016, I know where I'm going. I'm going to heaven, you know. I don't want anybody to weep for me, although I know my family will cry. I want to preach my own wedding. My own funeral. You know, I really do. I want to have it on videotape, so that way my kids can watch it and boo-hoo and cry. You know, me preaching my own funeral. You know, wouldn't that be awesome? And I know we have to wrap this up. I got so many thoughts, but I look at death like this.
We could come back another time.
It's totally, yeah.
But go ahead.
Okay.
We've still got a little.
Okay. No football team fan or no basketball. I mean, UK, the fans for UK, not one time have they mourned and grieved because UK won the championship. Not one time, So I don't want anybody to mourn and grieve when I win my championship.
Right.
Which is heaven. My daddy passed away on my birthday, 2006. People are like, oh, no, it ain't. Oh, it's yes. Because two great things happened personally on my birthday. Actually, three. But one of them was I was born, obviously. That's why it's my birthday. Second one was the very day that I came into being, my daddy went to heaven. And then the third thing, of course, is very minor, but the Pittsburgh Steelers won the Super Bowl. So, yeah. But, that's, I have no idea what God has in store. But if I know what I was going to say. I was born in 1975, died in 2016. It doesn't matter when I was born. It doesn't matter when I die. What matters is the little dash in the middle.
Right.
What I did with my time.
Right.
And that's what I want, is to make the most of my time I've got. And I know along the way to do what I feel like I need to do for the Lord and be led of the Lord, I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers along the way. But when I stand before God, I'm going to have peace. So, but I appreciate the time. I really do.
Thank you
Thank you
for the interview.